There was a Sunday afternoon, maybe 5 years into keeping bearded dragons, when I was sitting on the couch with my dragon stretched along my forearm, my hand resting lightly on the top of her head. Her eyes were closed. She wasn't moving. I remember thinking with that particular kind of warmth a keeper feels in those moments that we'd really arrived somewhere together. She trusted me. She was relaxed. She was enjoying it. I was, it turns out, only partly right. I'm not going to tell you she was miserable. She wasn't. But the story I was telling myself in that moment was a mammal story. The kind of story we tell when a cat closes its eyes during a chin scratch. And what I've come to understand slowly, and with some help, from people who'd been watching reptiles longer than I had, is that a bearded dragon closing its eyes while you hold it can mean several different things, and enjoying it is only one of them. This video is about the others. It's about the moments where the closed eyes mean something quieter and less flattering to us. Not distress exactly, but not contentment either. Something closer to waiting for this to be over. And the easiest way to wait is with my eyes shut. If that makes you wince a little, I get it. It made me wince. I want to walk through what I've learned, because I think the misreading is incredibly common. And because there's a kinder version of handling on the other side of understanding it. For a long time, I read closed eyes the way most of us do, because most of us learn to read animals on mammals. When your dog goes belly up and slow blinks, that's a yielding kind of trust. When a cat half closes its eyes at you, the body language books call it a love letter. We grow up around mammals. We get fluent in their signals without trying. So when we bring home a reptile and watch it close its eyes during a cuddle, the brain reaches for the nearest available story. The nearest available story is mammal-shaped. The nearest available story is, she likes this. I want to be careful here because I don't want to swing too hard the other direction. Bearded dragons aren't incapable of low arousal states around humans. With enough time and enough careful handling, they can settle. A relaxed beardy does exist, and it looks like something, well, get to what it looks like in a minute. But the version most of us are picking up on isn't that. The version most of us are picking up on is something more like coping. And the reason it's so easy to miss is that coping in a reptile is almost invisible to a brain trained on mammals. There's no whimper. There's no flinch. There's no tail tucked between legs. There's just stillness. And stillness in our default reading is contentment. What changed my thinking was paying attention to everything else the body was doing while the eyes were closed. Here's what I started noticing once I knew to look. The body that wasn't quite soft. The legs braced just slightly, not flopped. The grip on my arm a little tighter than it needed to be. The toes hooked rather than resting. The beard, not black, not puffed, but not the color it was when she was basking peacefully under her lamp either. A little darker, a little fuller, just off. And the breathing. This was the one he'd been blind to for years. A genuinely relaxed bearded dragon in the rare moments I've seen one. Truly settled out of the enclosure, breathe slowly and evenly. The body rises and falls in a rhythm that looks almost lazy. The dragon I'd been congratulating myself about the one with her eyes closed on my arm. Was breathing faster than that. Not panting, not gaping, just faster, tighter. Alert in a body that was holding very still. When I put those pieces together, the picture I'd been reading shifted. The eyes weren't closed because she was melting into the moment. The eyes were closed because something was happening near her face that her instincts didn't love. And shutting her eyes was one of the few things she could do about it. There's a researcher named Anna Wilkinson whose work on bearded dragon cognition I came across a few years into keeping, and one of the things her research has reminded me of, even when she isn't writing about handling specifically, is that these animals are processing more than we tend to credit them for. They are watching. They are remembering. They are forming associations. A handling session isn't a neutral event to them. It's input, and how they cope with that input is going to look different from how a dog copes, because their toolkit is different. For a reptile whose ancestors survived by being still and unnoticed when things got tense, closing your eyes is part of that toolkit. It reduces visual stimulation. It signals, in a quiet, internal way, "I'm waiting this out." It is not the same as a cat slow blinking at you. I'd argue in its meaning, it's closer to the opposite. I want to slow down here, because this is where I went wrong for a long time. The trap is that the behavior looks so much like relaxation. It really does. A still dragon with closed eyes on your chest is one of the most photogenic things in this hobby. Half the photos I've taken of my own dragons look exactly like that. And I don't want anyone to feel bad about those photos or about those moments, because the truth is more nuanced than you were torturing her. You almost certainly weren't. She was probably tolerating it. And tolerating it is a real thing reptiles do. And tolerating it sits on a spectrum. But there's a version of those moments where she's tolerating it and would rather not be. And the most common signals for that version are the ones I just walked through. Stiff body, tight grip, slightly darker beard, faster breathing, and yes, closed eyes, especially when your hand is near her head. The hand near the head is its own subtopic. I had to learn this one slowly. Bearded dragons have a parietal eye, sometimes called the third eye, on the top of their skull. It's not for vision the way the other two eyes are, but it's sensitive to light and movement, and one of its likely functions is detecting threats from above. In a dragon's evolutionary history, threats from above were a real category. A hand descending onto the top of the head is not a neutral event. This doesn't mean you can't touch your dragon's head. Plenty of dragons learn to tolerate it just fine. But tolerate is the operative word, and the closed eyes you see when you're stroking the top of the head are often the dragon doing exactly what evolution shaped her to do. When a shadow passes over, hold still and wait. So what does relaxed actually look like if not this? In my experience, and I want to qualify this because dragons vary, relaxed in a handling context tends to look more active, not less. A genuinely settled dragon will often explore. She'll walk along your arm. She'll look around, head moving, taking in the room. She might lick at things, which is how dragons gather information. Her body will feel loose against your skin rather than braced. Her grip will be there but not gripping. If she does sit still, her stillness will look soft rather than held. And this is the one that took me longest to internalize. A relaxed dragon will often want to leave at some point. She'll head for the edge of your arm. She'll try to climb off. That's not rejection. That's a dragon who feels secure enough to make a choice, which is in its own way a much higher compliment than going limp on your chest. The closed eyes on chest dragon often isn't choosing to be there. She just isn't choosing to leave, because choosing to leave would require feeling safe enough to move. What I do differently now is small. I don't think I've made any dramatic changes. I've made adjustments that, taken together, seem to have shifted what handling feels like to the dragon on the other end of it. I keep sessions shorter than I used to, not because longer is cruel, but because shorter respects the fact that being out of the enclosure is for most dragons a managed cost rather than a treat. 5 focused minutes where she gets to explore and then go back is, I've come to think, better than 30 minutes of her enduring my company on the couch. I touch the head less. When I do, I approach from the side rather than from above. And I watch the body, not the eyes, for the signal of how it's landing. If the body softens, I keep going. If anything stiffens, I stop. And I've stopped reading closed eyes as a yes, I read them as a question. The question is, what is the rest of the body saying? Sometimes the answer is, she's actually fine just dozing in warmth she likes. More often it's she's coping and I should give her the option to be done. I don't think any of this makes me a better keeper than I was 5 years ago. I think it makes me a more honest one. The dragon hasn't changed. The relationship hasn't changed. What's changed is that, in reading her, with fewer assumptions borrowed from animals, she has nothing in common with. If you want to try one thing this week, here's what it'd offer. Next time you're holding your dragon and you notice her eyes close, don't move for about 10 seconds. Don't pet, don't shift. Just watch the rest of her. The breathing, the grip, the beard, the legs. Whatever you see in those 10 seconds will tell you neohone than the closed eyes ever could. That habit, more than anything, is most of how I learned to read mine,